All right, Sergio Mora, I think I should just open up this show by giving you the floor because you were adamant over the course of the last few months, adamant last week when we did this show, that this Jake Paul, Anthony Joshua fight would not meet the low expectations that even people had for it. You said it was going to be an abomination. You said it was going to be gross. I'll ask you this. How are you feeling now that we just witnessed what we witnessed on Friday? 6th round knockout officially for Anthony Joshua. Your thoughts on all this, Sergio Mora?
Well, I still feel disgusted. I still feel terrible, especially when I hear about these numbers, about how much these guys got paid. I mean, I appreciate Jake Paul getting paid, but not the $92 million that I'm reading about. Maybe you can correct me.
I am going to correct you immediately because it wasn't $92 million.
How much was it then?
Anthony Joshua's purse was around $30 million. My guess is that...
Oh, so you're guessing now. Is that what reporters do? Is that Sports Illustrated boxing reporters now? That's what they do now? They guess? They assume?
It's not $92 million. I can tell you that.
That's what's being paraded by everybody. $92 million plus. All right.
Great.
So
well, when people this is getting off topic here. There is no sport though where salaries, purses are misrepresented more than boxing. Everybody inflates their purse. Everybody inflates the pay-per-view buys. Bottom line, AJ was around 30. My guess is that Jake Paul was somewhere between 40 and 50. But go on. Talk about the fight.
Okay, so you're guessing. So that's just what they put on paper, not what Jake Paul's going to make off of sponsors and all the things that he sells and product placement and all the other stuff. I'm going to go out on record and say he made the $90 million. All right. So whether you agree or not, this guy made $90 million.
He did not, but go ahead.
For a clown show, for a freaking clown show. Jake Paul embarrassed himself, embarrassed the sport, and embarrassed everyone that calls himself a fighter. And I've been telling you this for years. The thing about boxers is we train to be tired. We train to be hurt. We train to roll with punches. We train for a lot of things that this YouTube Disney star has been nobody. Never learned the trait. He never learned how to fight. He learned how to throw some punches. He learned how to box. And I told you it's because Jake Paul had the resources. He can have a head start in this career like you did in life, and you can make it out. But the thing is, when a fighter really wants to hurt another non-fighter, he can do it, and he can do it a lot easier and a lot faster. Anthony Joshua played with his food, and I'm going to tell you right now, he played with his food. I don't think he should have went to the 6th round, maybe the 4th at latest, because Jake Paul was running. He wasn't boxing. He was running. And every time he had a chance to try to tackle Anthony Joshua in fear, he was on his knees. It looked like he was praying. Jake Paul spent more times on his knees than you did in college praying for a girlfriend. It was embarrassing, Chris Mannix. It was embarrassing. And all the people that tuned in to Netflix and everyone else, just like the Mike Tyson fiasco that happened a couple of years ago, we feel disgusted for having to watch that.
I'm not going to defend the fight. It was a bad fight. It was actually worse.
You're not going to put him on. You're not going to put him on the cover of Sports Illustrated again?
No, because we put him on the cover of Sports Illustrated for very different reasons than boxing. It was a power issue, as you know. But I'm not going to defend the fight. It was a bad fight, and it was actually a worse fight than I expected it was going to be because of the way that Jake Paul fought. Now, it would have been stupid of him to go out there like Francis Ngannou and just try to go blow for blow with Anthony Joshua. But I expected maybe him to try to test the chin of AJ earlier and this fight to end with some kind of destructive 2nd round, 3rd round at the latest, Anthony Joshua knockout. Like the over-under on rounds for this fight was 2.5. And I struggled with that because I wondered like, would AJ get him out of here in the 2nd round? Would it take him into the 3rd? Would he get through the 3rd? Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine it would last into the 6th. And that's because Jake Paul ran. He ran and ran and ran. I mean, we'll get to AJ in a second, but Jake Paul did not come into this fight trying to win this fight. That's a fact. He used the entirety of the ring. It was the biggest ring I've ever seen, 22 by 22. That's the kind of ring you very rarely see in boxing. And on the championship level, the last time I can remember seeing that was the Canelo-Billy Joe Saunders fight. Remember that in Texas, when Billy Joe Saunders insisted on the big ring. So Jake Paul got the big ring, ran around the big ring. I guess if you want to give him a moral victory, he survived 5+ rounds. He went longer than Ngannou. He went longer than Otto Wallin. I guess I'm not giving him that. I'm saying if you want to, if you're Jake Paul and you want to take that kind of victory lap, fine. But it was an ugly fight, and he was a big reason why. On Joshua, this was bad, man. This was really bad. Like, I've heard some people on social media defending Anthony Joshua's performance by saying, hey, it's tough when a guy's moving around as much as Jake Paul is. Well, if you're an Olympic gold medalist and you're a 2-time heavyweight champion and you still believe you're one of the best heavyweights in the world, you've got to be able to cut the ring off against Jake Paul. Like, to your point, Jake Paul wasn't so much moving laterally all the time. He was literally running. Look at some of those rounds. He was running. He was going north to south, not side to side. He was running. Anthony Joshua should have been able to cut the ring off. And the times that AJ had Jake Paul cornered, he couldn't get shots off. He wasn't going to the body. He wasn't using his superior size on Jake. Like, I heard Nikisa Badarian say afterwards that AJ was leaning on Jake. Come on. Like, Jake was leaning into AJ, falling into AJ, and that's why those clinches were taking place. AJ is purportedly one of the best heavyweights in boxing. AJ believes he's on the level that he should challenge Tyson Fury. That wasn't the kind of performance that makes me believe Anthony Joshua is still a high-level heavyweight.
Well, you're wrong again. Anthony Joshua didn't look great because he wasn't allowed to look great. When you're in there with a smaller fighter that refuses to engage, refuses to box, to fight, he's running. Think of Canelo Williams' school. Canelo didn't look good, and he got accused of not being able to.
Okay, can I just 1 second? 1 second. I knew you were going to go there.
Oh,
Williams' school was an undefeated 168-pounder with a deep amateur background. Jake Paul is a guy who lost to Tommy Fury with no amateur background. So don't compare the two. Don't compare Williams' school to Jake Paul. It's not the same thing.
No, but I can compare a man running for his life and another man running for his life. These guys didn't want to engage. They didn't want to try to win. Now, I told you, Jake Paul was going to look for one shot. That's the overhand right. And once he misses that, he's going to realize he's in for a long night and a painful one. He did attempt, 2 or 3 overhand rights? Maybe with and he landed one. Good for him. And it did nothing to him. It actually worked against him because he landed that right hand and he realized he's still coming. And that's when a non-fighter, that's when a guy like Jake Paul, that's when an average guy off the street with a big mouth and a background in marketing realizes, oh, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble and this is going to hurt. And he paid the price for it. I want to relish in him getting his jaw broken. I want to relish in the big swollen jaw that he has and how everyone's making fun of. I want to do all that. But I also want to give him a little bit of credit, right? He still knew he was going to get hurt. He still knew he was going to get he was going to get something broken. If it wasn't a rib, it was going to be a jaw. So I give him credit for going in the ring and doing that. But here's the thing. I got to take that credit immediately back because he got paid a lot of money. Any guy off the street can be brave if they're going to pay him life-changing generational money. So look, I'm not going to give Jake Paul credit for being brave because he wasn't, and I told you that. I'm not going to give him credit for being a fighter because he's not a boxer. He's terrible, terrible. The only 2 boxers with some kind of resume that he actually boxed on his resume beat him. That's Tommy Fury and now Anthony Joshua.
But hold on, not true. Andre August and Ryan Borland were 2 guys with records. They had better records and resumes than Tommy Fury did. Tommy Fury's basically been on the Misfits tour.
Mannix, why do you insist on defending this guy?
I'm not defending him, but you got to get your facts straight here. You can't say that Tommy Fury has a better resume than Ryan Borland and Andre August. I'm not saying either one of them or any of them are good, but Jake Paul has 2 wins over guys that are considered, quote, real boxers. And they're both by knockout, and they're both in the first round.
The majority of his boxing wins on his record are non-boxers. Can I say that?
Yes.
Okay, so he's fighting non-boxers, non-fighters, especially guys that don't know how to put punches together. And I'm going to defend Anthony Joshua not cutting off the ring. He's always been a heavy foot guy. That's what happens when you're a heavyweight. You stand in front of another gigantic man, and whoever lands first is going to be the one hurt. They're not experts at cutting off the ring, especially a 6'6", heavy, 250-pound plus man who has slow, heavy feet. He's a clumsy guy whenever it comes, past having to jab twice. In order to track down guys that move a lot, you need to jab your way in with 2 or 3 jabs. You can't do it with single shots. Canelo was another example of that. He's always had heavy concrete feet and he's never jabbed his way in. So if you didn't have fast feet and fast, quick jabs to corner and cut off the ring, it has nothing to do with your feet. It has to do with your upper body and your feet, both things, cutting off the ring and then laying into the body. I think that's what Joshua caught on to. He wasn't going to land a headshot cleanly. So he started digging down to the body. And anytime Jake Paul cowardly tried to clinch and go on his knees, he started hitting him in the side, in the body, because he has to put on a show. And you heard the referee, Mannix, actually admonish Jake Paul and saying, come on, man, no one wants to look at this stuff. And he didn't use the word stuff. That I've never heard in boxing. A referee, the third man in the ring, admonishing and scolding another fighter for looking embarrassing, for being embarrassed for the fans watching this fiasco. I've never heard that. I've heard mix it up. You guys got to punch, but not a verbal lashing like that. Like, come on, man, this is embarrassing. You better throw some punches. That was what Jake Paul did. All right. So that's how he brought down the sport of boxing. I don't care how much money he got paid. I don't care how great, how many people watched on Netflix. The actual presentation of what he attempted to do was a disgrace. Jake Paul is a disgrace to boxing. I'll continue saying that. This man doesn't know how to box. He'll never be a world champion. He's a professional troll. And anytime he steps up to a man that knows how to box, whether he's 250 pounds or 150 pounds, he's going to get embarrassed because he can't take a punch and he doesn't have heart. He doesn't have heart. He doesn't have cojones. He has a wallet full of money with a lot of yes men around his corner.
Regardless of how much money he was paid, it does take a measure of cojones. It does take a measure of heart to get into the ring with the biggest puncher in boxing. Maybe not pound for pound the biggest puncher, but he's the biggest puncher in all of boxing with a devastating right hand that Jake Paul got a good taste of in that 6th round. Again, I'm not defending the fight, but I'm not going to sit here and say all the things you just said, that Jake is a disgrace to boxing, that he's bad for boxing. He is bringing eyeballs to boxing. He brought Netflix to boxing. He brought all these women, the Alicia Baumgartner fight.
I'm glad you
These
brought
things.
this up, Chris Mannix. I'm glad you brought this up. He's bringing eyeballs to boxing. Who the hell does he put on the undercard?
Yeah.
You can continue. What kind of an embarrassing undercard was it?
I want to get there because we're on the same page in the undercard. The undercard was crap. The undercard was not
There you go. So don't bring up that eyeballs to boxing stuff because when you finally have it, he wets the bed.
Generally speaking, because he is a promoter with MVP, they're doing their own shows. In addition to these Jake Paul shows, he is doing good things overall for boxing. I don't want to be done with Joshua here yet because you're really letting him off the hook here. I don't really get this. Like for a moment there, you were dying to bring up Canelo Erislandy Lara. I could see the way your mind was working. You were dying to bring up the movement that Canelo Alvarez dealt with Erislandy Lara. You already brought up, the movement that William School did against Canelo. This, to me, is the problem. You're comparing apples and oranges. You're comparing a guy like William School and maybe a guy like Erislandy Lara and all these other guys that Guillermo Rigondeaux that run. These are elite boxers, guys that have proven track records in the amateurs and the pros. Jake Paul doesn't have that. If Anthony Joshua was going up against the heavyweight version of William School, then I would probably agree with you and say, hey, man, if the guy doesn't want to fight, the guy doesn't want to fight. It's hard for a generally flat-footed fighter to pin him down. But Anthony Joshua was going up against Jake Paul. Anthony Joshua, with all his experience, all his skills, he should have been able to corner Jake Paul. And when he did, he should have let his hands go more. No body shots in this fight, Sergio. Why? Wasn't able to land those counter right hands when Jake Paul missed with his own rights. Why? We're on the same page kind of on Jake's performance, but you are letting Anthony Joshua off the hook. And I don't get it. I don't get why.
I am. I am letting him off the hook because he's fighting a much smaller man that didn't want to engage. That's the reason I'm letting him off the hook. Anthony Joshua has heavy feet. He's a big, strong, muscular fighter that if you have to chase someone down, you're going to look clumsy. He's going to look clumsy trying to fight a guy that's quick on his feet, moving laterally, and just running around the ring. And anytime he gets close enough to punch, the guy falls on his knees. It's frustrating, man.
Wasn't every time, though. Wasn't every time. Like, there were times that AJ missed a couple of shots. He missed with sweeping right hands. Like, you're missing Jake Paul.
Look, I'm gonna go as far as to say that if Tank Davis, a much smaller man, let's get rid of the size here.
Yep.
If a much smaller man, Tank Davis probably would have been had an easier time closing off the ring than Anthony Joshua. He probably would have thrown more punches to the body, thrown more combinations, because that's how a small man has to fight a guy like Jake Paul. But he would have had issues cutting off that ring as well. So don't make it seem like it was just Anthony Joshua's fault. And Anthony Joshua's in his mid-30s. This is a man coming off the ring. This is a man who's been inactive for a long time, coming off a loss. So come on, man. You got to give credit where I mean, you have to actually understand why a former heavyweight champion is not performing at his elite level, because he's not elite anymore. All right. That's the reason why. Now, Tank Davis, on the other hand, I mean, technically he's still elite. He's forgettable because, he's coming off some bad performances, close performances, but he would have wiped the floor with Jake Paul, because he would have thrown combinations. He would have fought like a smaller man, and he would have went to the body, because he would have been forced to go to the body at 5'5".
Yeah. Well, I think Jake would have fought Tank in the same way that Logan Paul fought Floyd Mayweather, where he would have applied pressure. He would have been physical and used that big size advantage against a guy that's never fought above 140 pounds. You know what this exposed with AJ? Like, that it didn't get talked about enough on the broadcast, I thought. Like, and maybe it's not the time to talk about it, I guess, because it's not a quote-unquote real fight. But this was, I mean, how many new trainers does Anthony Joshua have to have? Like, he starts off with Rob McCracken, spends most of his career with Rob. Goes to, Robert Garcia, then he's with Derek James, Ben Davison's in the mix. He changes trainers like boxers change gloves, and now he's working with Team Usyk. Like, look, I understand the thought process, like, hey, maybe I got to fight more like Alexander Usyk, but that ship has kind of sailed, hasn't it? Like, he's not going to be an Alexander Usyk-like heavyweight for however number of fights that he's got moving forward. You are the king of the stay with one trainer team. You are, the leader of that group. Like, do you find it at all troubling that AJ keeps changing trainers?
I find it troubling any time a championship fighter that got to the championship level with one guy after one loss leaving his day one, because it says more about the fighter. I say it all the time. It says more about the fighter, his mental fragility, his weak character. That's another thing, weak character. Because if you're going to stay with one person and be loyal to them because they were loyal to you throughout the teenage years, the dog years, the years where no one was making money, if they stayed with you then, and then when you finally get to the peak, you actually, leave them for another guy, or you leave them for another trainer, then that says more about you. All right. So that's the reason I say it. And I say with any fighter, but Anthony Joshua has been doing it since his first loss. So since his first loss, he's been looking at other trainers. He's been finding an excuse of why I'm not Superman no more. You're not Superman because you never were Superman on the worldwide level. There's always going to be a guy that's your kryptonite. There's always going to be a guy that does something better than you. Anthony Joshua didn't know how to adapt to that because he got started late in boxing. His size and his strength and his weight division is what made this man, he started boxing, I think, at 18 or 16, something like that. He started
19.
late. 19. That's incredible. Guys like him, Deontay Wilder, and a lot of other heavyweights. Heavyweights are the only ones that are allowed to get away with this late start, because they're so big and they don't need all the fine tuning, the movement, the quickness. They just need power and they need a jab. And that's why a lot of these heavyweights can go a long way with such a short start. Anthony Joshua has had an incredible career fighting incredibly big fighters. But when it came to fighting a 6'2" non-fighter that just wanted to run and not box and not engage, it's troubling for a man in his mid-30s that's coming off a loss that doesn't know what to do, because he didn't know how to cut off the ring because he wasn't a jabber. This guy's a gunslinger. He slings that right hand, he slings the left hooks, and he's vulnerable in his old exchanges. But in order for you to be a willing participant to be able to engage with him, you have to be the same level of height or size with him. Not when this guy's towering over you and he's punching down at you. It's just too big of a disadvantage. That's the reason Jake Paul, one, he didn't know how to do it. Two, he was incapable of doing it because of his size. And three, he's a coward. All right. He didn't want to exchange when Joshua was exchanging because that was just too much of a threat. He cowered away in the corner and he knew he was going to get hit. He just wanted this to go over with because anyone else would have been able to duck.
You know what? Get it over with that straight right hand. That straight right hand broke his jaw. Like that was a.
He wanted to get it over with.
Punch.
I seen it in his eyes when he was. No, he wanted to get it over with. That's what happens with fighters when they're exhausted, Mannix, when they have no other way out. It happens to any man that has ever been in that squared circle. When they're in the corner and they're tired, they got no legs. They just wanted to get it over with. Just hopefully it's not painful. That's what happened with Jake Paul. He ran out of excuses. He ran out of corners and he ran out of gas. And he paid for it with that big right hand that busted and broke his jaw. Love it.
You know, the smartest thing that Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn said after the fight was that maybe we should go straight into the Tyson Fury fight. And if I'm Team Joshua and I'm Team Matchroom, I am not thinking at all about an interim fight in February because the Anthony Joshua that I saw against Jake Paul gets beat by a lot of mid-level heavyweights. Like, let's hypothetically throw Cassius Chaney back into the mix. Cassius Chaney was the fighter that was scheduled to face Anthony Joshua in November. He was once a decent heavyweight prospect, has fallen on some hard times of late, but he's still like 6'6", 6'7", got some power. If I'm Matchroom, I'm not putting Anthony Joshua in with Cassius Chaney right now. And if it's not going to be Cassius Chaney, like, what's the point? There's some talk about a kickboxer that they could put AJ in with. That doesn't make any sense. Like, anybody beyond a Jake Paul level heavyweight, I wouldn't roll the dice. There's just too much money in a Tyson Fury fight. Do you think that Anthony Joshua should just say, forget it, forget the second fight, let's go straight into a Tyson Fury fight summer of 2026?
No, because he's been inactive too long, and going 5.5, 6 rounds with Jake Paul is not going to give you the activity or the confidence to go up against a former heavyweight champion that's 6'8". And no.
Yeah,
he
my
needs
point,
to
Sergio,
fight.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
He needs to fight, man.
He's not going to beat Tyson Fury.
You asked him the question. He needs to fight, and I would say to go after Chaney, even if it's a rolling the dice. That's part of being a boxer. If Matchroom wants for Anthony Joshua to be at his absolute best and most prepared to possibly, as the underdog, beat the Gypsy King, he needs to be active against a real fighter and not a Disney fighter that made him run around the ring. Even if it's rolling the dice, and maybe Joshua will get hurt, maybe he'll get knocked out, maybe he might lose, or maybe he wins in an embarrassing fashion. That's boxing, man. It's a theater of the unexpected, and you have to be able to gamble like that. And I think he'll win the gamble. I think they will win that gamble because Joshua's just that guy. He's smart enough to know when he can engage and not engage.
That's like $100 million risk to take, though, because the money that's on the table for Tyson Fury will undoubtedly be the biggest payday of Anthony Joshua's career. I'd think long and hard before I took that risk. I mean, I know how you feel about Jake Paul, but he's been saying he's not done with boxing. He was calling out Canelo from his hospital bed. The number of potential opponents out there for Jake Paul is drying up pretty quickly, but do you think that there's a future for Jake Paul as a boxer?
No, there's no future in Jake Paul. And I keep repeating these questions to you. He will never be a boxer. He will never be a real professional fighter, let alone win one of these hubcap titles. If there's a top 20, the 21st guy on that list will be Jake Paul. Any real fighter that comes semi-prepared will beat Jake Paul, let alone beat him up and knock him out and break his jaw. He cannot fight. He cannot box. He can maybe learn how to throw some punches, look the part, but looking the part is not being the part, Mannix, all right? So any single fighter, and it doesn't have to be a guy his weight. It could be a guy that's 175 or even a guy that's 160. I would even go as far as say a guy that's welterweight will beat up Jake Paul. A real professional welterweight will beat up and embarrass Jake Paul, all right? So this dude has no chance of ever becoming anything in our sport, and that's the reason I'm so adamant about him not being wanted in boxing. I don't think you're a fighter. You don't have the heart for it. Yes, I'm talking to you, Jake Paul. You don't have the heart, the cojones, the skill, the talent. You just have a bank account and a following. That doesn't cut it in boxing. So beat it, bum.
Well, he is better than some
He
of
is.
these crappy cruiserweights that we've been talking about. He's better than Andre August. He's better than Ryan Borland. He's better than Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., who he beat his last time out. He's better than some of these guys. So I'm not looking at, I don't think we can dismiss him quite yet from getting back to a point where, hey, maybe he is going to fight for a cruiserweight title. It won't be pretty. He's not going to win. But I don't think his career as a boxer is over. I do think it's going to take some rebuilding, and I think it's going to take some rebuilding on the influencer circuit. Like, I don't think we're going to see Jake Paul.
Oh, so back on the influencer. I mean, you just want him to just be relevant. You don't want him to actually be evolving into an actual quote unquote fighter. No, he doesn't go back to that influential circuit, or else we're never going to be able to respect him. He needs to go the boxer route, the 50-50 professional fighter route, a guy with a bad record, a guy that's been knocked out.
Because you go where the money is, just like you would do, like any fighter would do. And if he
No,
can find
no,
a
at
way,
this point, he needs to go where the respect is,
Well,
Chris Mannix, right?
you can't
Forget the
spend
money.
respect. If he can get KSI into the ring, it's a pretty big event. If he
Man,
can do
I'm
a
done with you.
rematch with Tommy
You are
Fury,
a company man and a shill, and you just want to sell more Sports Illustrated covers. You probably want to put them on the cover of Sports Illustrated now for showing quote unquote heart and determination and doing what a lot of people won't do. Man, get out of here. You are.
I started. Hold on.
You are backing up a bum and a coward and a guy that didn't come to fight. I respect Peter McNeely more for fighting Mike Tyson and trying to go out on his shield than I do Jake Paul running around the ring like a coward. You better stop with this nonsense.
You are once again misremembering the Peter McNeely fight. Peter McNeely did a lot of running in that ring too.
Yeah, he ran right into Mike Tyson's right hand, at least. You know,
Yes.
but
So you would have had more respect for Jake Paul if he did that?
We have more respect for him going out on the shield than what he did. Ask any fighter, ask any champion, ask anyone that's boxed. If they respect anything Jake Paul did in that ring, they're gonna be like, man, my little son, my little brother could do that.
Don't get me wrong. We started the show saying, both of us, an abomination of a fight. It was terrible. No credit anywhere. No credit for anybody. Nobody wins. I just came away from that fight feeling more disappointed in AJ than I did Jake Paul. Like, I kind of expected that from Jake Paul. I expected a middling, average to below average type of performance. I guess he was never really going to engage with AJ, but AJ is a guy that is scheduled to fight Tyson Fury next year. I wanted to see him go out there and dispatch of Jake Paul in 1 or 2 rounds. And I guarantee you, Sergio, there were people in Anthony Joshua's camp that felt the exact same way, that were, getting their stomach in knots watching this fight get to the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds. Like, that was not what they wanted to see from Anthony Joshua. Last thing for you, the event itself. Big amount of eyeballs watching on Netflix. I thought the whole event was completely underwhelming. I thought the undercard was awful. I think Jamal Harvey,
treat coming out of you.
Jamal Harvey might be a good fighter. He has no business fighting on, as the first fight on the main event. He should have been on the prelims. Anderson Silva versus Tyron Woodley. Who cares? Anderson Silva is 50-something years old. I know it's a crossover fight on a crossover type of event, but that did nothing for me. And then Alicia Baumgardner really making the case that maybe women shouldn't fight 12 3-minute rounds, because that was 36 minutes of one-sided fight by Alicia Baumgardner that did nothing to set the table for an Anthony Joshua fight. Like, you should have had 2 heavyweights or 2 light heavyweights or 2 cruiserweights banging it out on that as the co-main. Something more physical than what we saw. Instead, we saw 36 minutes of Alicia Baumgardner. Look, I think MVP's doing some really good things in boxing, especially in women's boxing. But these undercards, these events, look, they had a great one with the Katie Taylor-Amanda Serrano fight happening on the Tyson-Paul undercard. You've got to get closer to that level when you are putting fights on Netflix. You can't put these types of fights as the setup fights for a event with the number of eyeballs as Paul against Joshua. Also, with all these women you have, you got to start matching them up against each other, man. Like, you've got to make next Alicia Baumgardner versus Caroline Dubois. You've got to make next Amanda Serrano against Ellie Scottney. If Ellie Scottney wins all the belts at 122, you've got to get Michaela Mayer and match her up with Chantel Cameron. It's great to sign women. There are some fun women boxers. There are some fun women's fights, but having these one-sided fights like we saw with Bumgardner, it doesn't do anybody any good. I thought the undercard was really bad.
The undercard was terrible. And sometimes when you match up two big names on the undercard, they don't pan out because on paper it looked great, but then once they get in the ring, it doesn't pan out. And sometimes it's vice versa. But at least
What looked great?
I said at least sometimes on paper you match up names that don't pan out. In this case, Mannix, let me finish. In this case, they didn't even match up two names. They matched up two guys making their two guys with MMA guys, whatever. They're not boxers. A guy that's 1-0, going for his second pro fight, an Olympian, a U.S. Olympian, a 12-round, 3-minute women's fight. We know that can always go south. And then this, so-called main event. It was terrible from top to bottom. It was a ridiculous show. If you want people to tune in to a circus, but you also want to bring the boxing fan, and you got to put some real boxing fights together. That was an embarrassment of a show, top to bottom. And I'm sure, I don't care if Netflix got hits or not, as a boxing fan, people are not going to want to tune into that just to watch, how long was it? It was a few hours. It was long. I know that. They were doing a lot of filling. It was long, and a lot of it wasn't boxing.
And I started 8 Eastern, didn't get over till midnight, so a good 4 hours of that. And look, I would encourage Netflix to do a little more quality control on some of these events. Netflix is the ultimate fire hose. Everybody wants to be in business with Netflix. They do a tremendous job of production. But when they're involved in other sports like the NFL, and I think they do some tennis, some golf, whatever it may be that they're involved in, like they put on the best. Like they get great Christmas Day games or whatever other events that they're working on in 2026. Their boxing catalog, their boxing events have been events, but they've been subpar when the two guys get into the ring, whether it's Jake against Mike Tyson, whether it's this fight. Next year they're talking maybe about Pacquiao Mayweather 2. Hard pass on Pacquiao versus Mayweather 2. I want to see some real boxing events on Netflix in 2026 if they decide that they want to stay in the sport.
And I also want to see a respected former champion call it like it is, and don't call it like it is after the fact. Call it before. Call a spade, because all these guys that I respect, Lennox Lewis being one of them, they were tapping around this subject. They knew what they wanted to say. You could see the smile on their face. You could see their wheels turning. They wanted to mock the event, but they didn't. Someone needs to do it, because if you're not going to keep it real, then you're just selling your fans what you want to sell.
Come on, that's TV for you. You've done it too. You've done it too.
I've done it, but not to, I've done it to the fact where I got a joke about it, but I will joke about it. I won't keep a straight face about it. I would be like, hey, listen, what do we expect? And then I will go on my rant, but not trying to back it up, not trying to give Jake Paul credit for that. That was ridiculous.
All right. Well, we'll have more to discuss on this a little bit later in the week, next episode. But I'm glad you get that off your chest there, Sergio.
Well, I'm glad that I got it off my chest, because if I read your article coming off this fight, I'm sure it's going to be praising Jake Paul, and he'll probably be on the cover of Sports Illustrated for the courageous heart that he showed. And you probably think he deserves a Medal of Honor or something, man.
At no point in this podcast did I praise Jake Paul's performance. At no point whatsoever. I just
directly praise him by putting him on the most prestigious cover of sports, or what used to be the most prestigious cover of sports in Sports Illustrated. That's how you turn on the sport. That's how you turn off fans, Chris Mack. So how about you keep it real and write an article about things that I might have said. Quote me on that article, and then you can go on your rage,
Great.
your verbal rage.
I'm going to start reporting right now the 25th anniversary of the Contender. Let's get that
started.
And
let me throw my hat in there. All right, if Jake Paul wants to come back against a former champion to whoop his ass, hey, I'm right here. You want to come back on Cinco de Mayo weekend with a bunch of Mexicans watching you? I'll break your rib and not your jaw.
Your fans are all dead.
They're headed there.